So the first thing you want to do before you start even preheating the oven is to heat up the milk. So just pour 1 cup of milk into a very small saucepan and heat it up until it starts to form bubbles. So now you can see bubbles are actually forming on the edge right there, and there's a little bit of steam. So now I'm going to throw in some Earl Grey tea bags. Make sure the tea bags are submerged in the milk and go ahead and cover them. Hi. Now you want to cover it for, 30 minutes or so. I'm just going to probably not do quite as long because I'm snapping this, but normally I would do a whole 30 minutes. Now before I do anything, I'm actually going to line my baking pan, this is like a 9 by 13 inch baking pan, with parchment paper. And the first thing I do for that is to spray it with cooking. Here's the first kitchen tip that I am going to give you. Most people will take a piece of parchment paper and jam it in here like this to try to line the parchment paper. And that gives you these really ugly. Because here's the thing, no matter how much you try to smooth this out right here, you're always going to have these really ugly corners and these really ugly wrinkles in the paper, and that's going to affect your final product. Instead, take your parchment paper like this and just line it up so that the edges of the paper line up with the edge of the pan. But we're not done yet. So you'll see there's this flap that's of the paper that's kind of still there. Take a piece of scissors, or take a scissors and just cut off that piece of paper. Now don't throw away this extra piece of paper right here. Go ahead and line it up so it's the short edge of the pan right there and figure out where that is and just snip it with scissors. Now take this short piece of paper and just cut it lengthwise like this so you have 2 skinny strips. And then just put those pieces of paper right there on the edge. And the cooking spray that you would spray down there, that keeps them from sticking. That keeps it totally sticking on the edge of the pan. There you've got. So I took half a cup or 1 stick of butter and I threw it in the bowl of a stand mixer, and I'm going to go ahead and add 1.5 cups of sugar to that. And then we're going to turn it on and start beating the sugar with the with the butter until it's creamy. So you'll notice it's starting to get super creamy and it's starting to cling to the side of the pan or the bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that and add 1 egg. And once it's incorporated, go ahead and add the second egg. Whoops! And that's why you stop the motor, because you want to make sure that you get. We're going to continue anyway. So once you added the egg, go ahead and turn the mixer back on to incorporate that one as well. See how smooth and creamy that batter is? If you add both eggs in there, it'll be less smooth. There's a potential for it to be less smooth and creamy. So that's why you add 1 egg at a time. So at this point, we're going to take that milk that we had and go ahead and pour it back into the measuring cup because I want to measure out to see how much I have. The tea bags and just squeeze out gently to get as much flavor as possible. Right there. Look at that. So because the bags did absorb a little bit of milk, I'm going to go ahead and just add just a teensiest of bits to bring this back to 1 cup. So next I'm going to add 2 cups of flour to this, and that's about 280 grams of flour. That's all-purpose that I'm using right here. Then turn the mixer on very slowly. I like to sort of jostle it on and off to let it absorb. And once it starts to absorb the flour more, the dry ingredients more, you can turn it on to faster speed to beat that in. At this point, I actually like to lift up the mixer head and sort of scrape the sides down, just to make sure I got any weird spots that are dry or whatever. Then while it's on, pour about half of the Earl Grey milk into the bowl. Now add another 1.5 cups of flour, bringing this total to 3.5 cups. The 1.5 cups will be 210 grams, so total will be. So now just slowly do the exact same thing to try to incorporate it into the batter, and then increase the speed once the flour is absorbed. And with the mixer still on, go ahead and pour in the rest of the Earl Grey tea. Take a pound of blueberries and add it to the bowl right here, and just use a spatula and gently fold. Then scrape the batter into that prepared pan that you had. And once that's in there, go ahead and spread the batter all the way to the edges. I'm using an offset knife here, but you can use, or a spatula. We're not done yet because coffee cake is not coffee cake unless it has a crumb topping. At least that's what I think. So I'm going to make a crumb topping to put on top of this cake. So for the crumb topping, we're going to add 2/3 cup packed dark brown sugar. That's about 145 grams. To that, add 1 cup of flour, which is 140 grams. Add 2 tablespoons of turbinado sugar, because I love the crunch of turbinado sugar. And finally, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And to that, we're going to add about 6 tablespoons of cold butter from the refrigerator. That's been kind of sliced up into these patties. The fun part. I use my hands and I just start breaking up the butter and squeezing it into chunks like this. I'm doing that all over. Now, once you've worked all the crumb topping together, you can see it starts to clump up like this. That's exactly what you want. Once it's clumpy like that, start sprinkling it all over your cake. And now the cake is ready to be baked. I like to put it on this rimmed baking sheet because it makes it much easier for you to remove it in and out of the oven. And that's it. Bake it for 50 to 60 minutes or until a toothpick inserted into the center of the cake comes out clean.